What is the ASEAN way of doing diplomacy and engaging with the world? How would you describe it, Minister?
Well, I think the ASEAN way is through cooperation with all countries or those who wish to cooperate with ASEAN. We have also the ASEAN way in the sense of reaching decisions by consensus. But I think most importantly, the ASEAN way is to try and bring together all the parties in our region, not only the ASEAN members, but the other countries who are not members of ASEAN. And that's through the concept of ASEAN centrality, especially through the institutions of ASEAN, where we have a number of institutions such as the East Asia Summit, the ASEAN Regional Forum, where ASEAN, as chair, convenes meetings and invites all the major countries in our region, including those outside of our region, the EU, the United States. And these are the forums where they all meet to discuss issues of regional and even global import. So that way, the ASEAN is a kind of convener and facilitator, as well as an institution aimed at, or a grouping aimed at improving the lives of its members too, through economic, social, and political measures.
And something that the world is struggling right now with is taking sides. We've always said that if countries do not take sides as much, maybe it would be a better place right now. But then again, you look at the sort of wars in the world right now, you look at people being killed, and then it becomes a moral question as well. You as a country have a responsibility to take the side of the good. At the same time, you want global peace at the end of the day. So how do you balance those two, let's say, opposing forces?
Well, I think what really the ASEAN way of dealing that is first to focus on ASEAN's own objectives, how to improve the lives of our people, how to strengthen the ASEAN community, and how to enhance integration among the ASEAN member states. But I think the bigger picture here is that the ASEAN countries, who are essentially middle power countries in our region, I think we have realized that we should be the makers of our own destiny, and that we shouldn't let the future of our region be determined by one side or a big power or the big powers. We have a duty to ourselves and our people to ensure that we also have a say in how our region develops. And that's how we move forward. We have our own identity, and we deal with the powers in that way by asserting the ASEAN view as much as possible. Because we are in this region, we will be here forever, probably, and so yes. It's really our duty as let's say government officials and as policymakers to ensure that our countries are developed enough to really have a future say, or a say even now in the present, on how our region develops, the ASEAN region, even the wider Indo-Pacific region, and eventually even on global issues of concern to us, such as climate change, health security, etc. So we are doing our way by trying to assert to the best of our ability our voice in regional and global affairs.
And when you try to convince your colleagues in maybe China or in the West that consensus building is the way to go, what sort of response do you usually get from them, Minister?
Well, I think, first of all, we have to realize that ASEAN's main strength, at least with the other countries in the region, is our power of convening meetings and also facilitating the meetings. I said earlier that, for example, our institutions like the East Asia Summit attracts almost every country in the region, even extra-regional countries. And the issues we discuss are issues yes. of concern to all of us. And the idea is to try and bring the dialogue together. So we don't really think that we'll be able to solve the problems at those meetings. But the thing is for countries to exchange their views so we develop a better understanding. We'll build on that in the future, because our aim is really to promote dialogue and try and see we can facilitate the meeting of minds. And that's where the power of ASEAN lies, in the sense that we're the only institution that has the ability to attract the participation of major powers and even the middle powers in our region, and as I said, even outside the region, from EU, from Western countries as well, plus our own dialogue partners. We have many mechanisms of dealing with other countries too. So that's where, that's our role, to see how we can have the dialogue. Well, I could just add to that. For example, the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation, we now have over 50 countries who have acceded, especially in recent years, quite a number. So I think many countries, even from other regions, are seeing the value of ASEAN and working with ASEAN to promote greater cooperation and dialogue. So I think that's, to me, an excellent sign of the growing relevance, in fact, of ASEAN and recognition of the contributions we can make towards peace and stability, as well as economic development and growth.
Mr. Mendel, I think you'll be better placed to answer this because we're seeing headlines almost every day now about clashes between the Chinese and the Philippines in the open seas. And how is Philippines balancing those economic relations with China? And then you obviously are a treaty ally of the United States. How does that work out?
Well, we have said on many occasions, of course, we have extensive relations with China, especially on the economic front, and of course with the United States also as a treaty ally. And we are dealing with both of them in a way that we try and enhance our interests. Of course, we have tensions in the South China Sea. And those are tensions, I think, which have been there, especially recently, and has led to a number of incidents. But we have always been committed to dealing with these tensions or incidents through management, through diplomatic or peaceful means, and we're still committed to that. And of course, we are doing everything in our ability to ensure that we try and follow this track. But of course, we've made perfectly clear that while we're committed to peaceful or diplomatic solutions, it would not be at the expense of our interests as far as the South China Sea is concerned. With the United States, of course, we have a treaty, and we've had strong historical relations with them, either on the economic or the security front. And at the moment, it's from our conversations with U.S. officials, I think I can only say that we have a great optimism that this relationship will continue. That being said, of course, we're also committed to discussing with China on how we can manage the tensions in the South China Sea. So those are the approaches. But at the same time, we're also dealing with other partners.
Just to follow up on that,
Yeah.
When President Donald Trump goes out in the Oval Office and says, you know what, if NATO countries don't pay up, we're not going to defend you. What goes on in the mind of officials in Manila? What is your reaction to statements like that?
Well, I can only say our reactions are reactions to what we have discussed with U.S. officials in the current administration. And I can say at this point that it gives great hope and optimism that our relationship will not only remain stable, but could increase in the future.
Let's also talk about those middle powers, your likes of India, for example. What role does ASEAN see for countries like India when it comes to bridging those polarized divisions in the world? How can ASEAN combine with India to create consensus in the world?
Yes, I could. Well, first of all, the Philippines is now the ASEAN-India coordinator. And we already have a lot on our plate. We have a lot of activities being planned. We'll be for the next 3 years during our coordinatorship, because India is definitely a very valuable partner for individual ASEAN countries as well as ASEAN as a whole. And I think if you look at the broader picture, India's Indo-Pacific strategy, which is now gaining much greater shape, and participation of India, especially in our region, and the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific, a document we adopted some years ago, practically coincide, especially on the main values that we have is of ensuring a free and open Indo-Pacific, ensuring greater prosperity for our peoples. So I think, and of course, commitments to international law and a rules-based order. So I think these basic values provide the basis for really a strong relationship, whether it be on the economic front or cultural front. So India is obviously a very important partner for ASEAN as well as the individual ASEAN countries.
Just on that point of non-interference in a fellow ASEAN state, we've seen reports of alleged American weapons flowing into Myanmar. We've heard about the Chinese involvement in Myanmar. So we've even seen the junta chief visiting Moscow and talking to President Putin and all of that. So when you see all these other major players heavily involved in Myanmar, how does ASEAN manage to still stick to the policy of non-interference? Is there a tendency somewhere to sort of say, if they're interfering, shouldn't we protect our interests as well? Mr.
Well, first let me say that the basic framework of ASEAN's approach to Myanmar is the 5-point consensus. And we still remain committed to that. And that includes a number of elements which are essentially aimed at trying to get the stakeholders to meet and discuss. The second point is humanitarian assistance, where ASEAN has contributed to that. And more or less that has been the situation in the past few years. But we have to recognize that ultimately any solution to the problem in Myanmar has to be Myanmar-led. The people have to do it. What ASEAN can do using the 5-point consensus as a framework is to try and see how we can create conditions for dialogue. No one is saying this can happen overnight. In fact, many countries in ASEAN, especially, for example, my colleague from Thailand, have tried to also arrange through activities to involve some of the stakeholders. And this kind of activities are being encouraged by ASEAN. But I think what we're really trying to impress is that in order to have lasting peace, in order to have stability, the people of Myanmar have to be the ones now to reach any kind of solution. What we can do is to try and encourage them and nudge them forward. We're willing to work even with other countries, provided they're within the context of the 5-point consensus, and ASEAN coordinates with them too, if possible. So that's been our approach. It will continue to be our approach. Also with the UN, we work with them too. So really, this is a kind of situation where you really have to rely on the internal forces to be the eventual solution.